Welcome, everyone. We're so glad so many of you are joining us for this official side event of the World Circular Economy Forum. I'm Vanessa Timmer, the Executive Director of OneEarth, a nonprofit think and do tank in mainstreaming sustainable living in British Columbia, Canada, and around the world. We acknowledge that most of the presenters today are on the traditional and unceded territories of the Coast Salish peoples, including the territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh. This acknowledgement is a reminder of the discriminatory, racist, and colonial practices that have had a lasting legacy and continue to create barriers for Indigenous peoples and communities. We thank them for having cared for this land historically and today, and we look forward to continuing to work with them in partnership. This webinar today, and we'll start the slides, is on sustainable lifestyles and the circular economy, Canadian insights on motivations, and it's part of the World Circular Economy Forum online. It is co-presented by OneEarth with the Share, Reuse, Repair Initiative. Lead partners and sponsors are Vancity Credit Union and SITRA, the Finnish Innovation Fund. The co-sponsors are BC-based companies and organizations from a diversity of sectors: Modo, a car-sharing cooperative; Hub Cycling; River Select, an Indigenous fisheries cooperative; the Rebuild Hub, started by Unbuilders Deconstruction Company and Habitat for Humanity Restore; Cambo Energy Group, which runs Empower Me, a program engaging multilingual, multicultural, and vulnerable communities on energy efficiency; and the Vancouver Foundation, Canada's largest community foundation. During the webinar, you can all submit questions via the Q&A option, which you access from the menu bar on your webinar screen. So there's a Q&A button that you can press there, and a note, when you post a question, it's immediately visible to everyone. Additionally, you can vote on other people's questions that you're keen to hear the answer to by clicking on the thumbs up next to their question. And this voting system helps us guide us which one we're going to focus on in the Q&A. And like in other Zoom meetings, the chat box is available for any comments, discussion, or sharing links to resources. Please note that this session is being recorded, and participant video and audio are not being recorded, but your questions and comments are. And we encourage you all to rename yourself on your Zoom link with your name and affiliation as a participant. And we're actually really interested to find out who's all here. So over 300 people registered, and many of you, I'm sure, are joining us now. So please, everyone, say hello in writing in the chat box with your name, affiliation, or organization, or citizen, and your location. I'll demonstrate with Vanessa Timmer, Executive Director, OneEarth, Vancouver, Canada. So please go ahead and start adding your names, affiliation, organization, or write citizen. We welcome you very much. Oh, this is wonderful. We're already seeing lots of people coming in. Welcome all of you. Oh, this is great, great. So we're really thrilled to have you all with us today. Wonderful, welcome. So our next slide, I'll show you the Twitter handles and the hashtags for OneEarth, for SITRA, for Vancity, and the Share, Reuse, Repair Initiative. And we're going to be adding those after this introduction section on the chat for your use, as well as a couple of hashtags like the hashtag for the World Circular Economy Forum. So I introduced my nonprofit OneEarth, but our focus is really on mainstreaming sustainable living. So next slide, please. 72% of greenhouse gas emissions can be attributed to household consumption, including upstream production of goods and services that support our everyday lives. Then it's important to note that the richest 10% of the world emit more than half of the world's CO2 emissions, so our footprints are vastly different. And globally, remaining in our carbon and ecological footprint budgets requires transformations in our ways of living that are inclusive and just and ensure individual and societal well-being. So with OneEarth, we take a people-centered approach to the circular economy that starts with rethinking how we live. Often circular economy conversations start with a focus on extraction or production or design, the supply side. But the circular economy is also about demand, which is where lifestyles come in. And it's not one size fits all lifestyle, but really a diversity of ways of living. Now, we're taking into account that COVID-19 is a very challenging context, this pandemic. It's full of much suffering, and it's forcing people to change habits and also raising questions about what is essential and the importance of care. People are searching for how to reset their own lives and support a green and just recovery. And the work we're presenting today provides us key insights for how we could scale sustainable living. So today's webinar is a good news story. The opportunity for sustainable living is much larger than many think. And our main findings of this whole webinar and our take-home message to all of you is that this is the good news. It is not just those with green, eco, or sustainable motivations that end up adopting sustainable living practices. These actions, sustainable living actions, align with a diverse array of motivations, even within the same person. Motivations including caring for family, saving money, health and wellness, supporting local businesses also lead people to sustainable living actions and supporting circular goods and services. So just for fun, we're going to do a poll now to see what your favorite sustainable living action is from this list. You'll need to scroll down to see the options, select an option and click submit. And let's take about 20 seconds now to actually fill this out. So what is your favorite sustainable living action? And actually, panelists, you can do this too. So go ahead and fill out the poll and press submit. Let's take another few seconds. Okay, let's share the results and take a look at where we're at in terms of what people prioritize. And it looks like getting things secondhand, well, it seems quite spread across all these different sustainable living actions, but getting things secondhand, buying, swapping, free, that's the top one that people are kind of finding is their favorite one. Well, taking these individual actions we all know makes an impact. What we do in our daily lives really does matter to create healthier, better, and lighter lives. But this is not just a story of individual action. It's also a story of political mobilization for systems change, because we often don't have the option to take these sustainable living actions. They require a supportive context. There is a critical and leading role for governments, businesses, cultural institutions, innovators, educators, and civil society to make sustainable living affordable, accessible, desirable, and actually the default. So it is this systemic approach to sustainable living that OneEarth advances here in British Columbia and globally with partners like the United Nations One Planet Network Sustainable Lifestyles and Education Program, and in partnership with the next presenters, our colleagues at SITRA Finnish Innovation Fund. I have the pleasure of introducing now Markus Tero and Sari Lane from SITRA, who will describe how the motivational study originated in Finland and how this research supported them mainstreaming sustainable living there. And you'll hear from my OneEarth colleagues later how we took this motivational work and are now applying it in Canada. We're finding similar themes, but also interesting differences. The SITRA Sustainable Everyday Lives team, Markus and Sari are the keys of that, parts of that, recently hit a milestone. 1 million lifestyle quiz tests were completed, which helps Finnish people calculate their own personal footprint and compare them with the Finnish average. This is not just a number. It means that many people want to know what they can do to address environmental crises at the scale and urgency required. And of course, to create the conditions to enable them to take those actions. And now over to you, Markus and Sari.
Thanks so much, Vanessa. It's a pleasure to be here. Good morning to everyone, and I'll give you a little bit of background and of how we've started and what we are going to do next. And then my colleague Sari will present the motivational profile details of Finland. If we go to the next slide. So for the past 3 years, the Finnish Innovation Fund, SITRA, has worked on how to engage, inspire, and equip people so that they can become change makers in their own life and build their own path towards a sustainable, good life. And we've been, like Vanessa very kindly said, very successful in this work. And we've gained quite a lot of international attention. And we want to share these tools, ways of working, and models to every change maker team out there in the world, and eventually build a community of practitioners that can learn from each other and continuously improve these tools and ways of working, so that we can actually engage everyone in the world in living and taking more sustainable living actions. And that's our end game. So how do we go from a small group of environmentally motivated and minded people towards the fact that everyone can be part of the solution? And why we do this is that we know that there's a huge untapped potential in reducing carbon emissions if we get people to change the way that they live, what they eat, how they move about, and what type of products and services they buy. And to that, it's key to understand that what makes people make their everyday selections and why they choose what they choose. If we go to the next slide. When we started, our first realization was that majority of people, roughly 3 years ago in Finland, had the impression that if you live in a sustainable manner, that's going to be a hard burden. You have to say no to a lot of things. You have to stop. You have to use less of something that you're used to. You have to give up. You need to bring down, decrease, diminish. Basically, people think that sustainability sucks. Therefore, it's very hard to engage regular people in changing their everyday practices. And we've devised a mechanism, digital tools that give people positive suggestions of what to do more of and how to tell about those things to their friends, family, co-workers, and so forth. And this snowball effect has now been growing in Finland. And the key to this is to understand the motivations, why people choose what they choose, and then use them to promote and make sustainability-driven products more appealing to much wider group of people. So Sari will now talk about the more details of the motivational work that we've done in Finland.
Thank you, Markus. Yes, so my name is Sari Laine, and I have worked last 4 years in SITRA, inspiring Finnish people to do more sustainable living actions. So why then the motivations? Motivation is the energy that directs our behavior. That energy can come from different sources. We can be motivated to pursue outcomes we want, such as paycheck or better body. This is a definition by Rogers and Lois. Often saving the planet is not our primary motivation when we make choices. The primary motivations usually concern health and wellness, for example, saving time, being a member of a community, or bringing joy to our close ones. The big question is, how can we steer people towards sustainable choices using these separate motivations? How can we piggyback these motivations and make their actions more sustainable? With the help of motivation profiles, we understand what lies behind our choices and acts. This understanding enables us to promote sustainable change through these underlying motivations. This doesn't mean demographic-based segmentation, but rather a grouping of an individual's behavior models into motivation profiles. A young student from a large city may have the same motivations as a senior city from a smaller town. Conducting this research will open your eyes to a new way of thinking about sustainable business and development and marketing. Next slide, please. Here are the different motivations for sustainable choices in Finland. As you can see, the environmental friendliness is also there, but it's a smaller, not so big motivations behind our choices. But bigger motivations are these ones that are darker blue circles. There is a saving time, long life and durability of a product, small daily actions, bringing joy to me and to my family. But there's the biggest one is the need and practicality. We Finns are really practical people. I don't know, it's maybe our climate, but we'll see it in the next profiles as well. Next slide, please. Here you can see all the 7 profiles we studied in Finland. And they are set on a table based on how sustainable their actions are they doing sustainable actions consciously or subconsciously? As you can see on the right, the most unsustainable profile is comfort-seeking hedonist with 13%. They usually have lots of money, and this profile wants to work hard and relax hard. And on the other end is a resourceful eco-warrior who is very sustainable with his or her choices and actions and does them very consciously and rationally. As you can see, the most prominent profile is the traditional voice of reason. This group can do lots of sustainable actions in their everyday life. However, if you mention them carbon neutrality and resource wiseness, they right away correct you and say that they don't have anything, or individual does not have anything impact on our planet. So they are doing their sustainable living actions very consistently. Next one, I will go through the colored ones more deeply. Next slide, please. So here is the traditional voice of reason. Like I said, it's the most prominent group in Finnish profiling. They are very much taking the decisions based on facts and rational thought. They also want to bring pleasure to themselves and their inner circle. They appreciate domestic and local production and products that have high quality, durability, and repairability. As you saw from an earlier graph, they are doing sustainable living actions, but they are not thinking of impacting to any greater purpose with their decisions. In contrary, if you talk eco-talk to this profile, they are not going to take it well, and it's a folly to them. I was actually in an interview with this profile, and he was doing everything perfectly. He was picking the blueberries from the forest, buying only really quality clothes so that they can be repaired. And also they even gave a neighbor the leftover food if they went to traveling. But when I said the word carbon neutrality, what do you think about that? He kind of jumped out of his chair and said, nothing that I do have any impact. So if you want to target messaging to this group, do not use any eco language. This group especially likes to see messaging that this is just a common sense to do this. Next slide, please. Here we have the profile trend-setting feel-good green. It's our hipster profile, if I can say that. They are really early adopters and they seek luxury. But luxury means meaningful products and experiences to them. As you saw earlier, we have also the profile comfort-seeking hedonist in our 7 profiles, which is all about luxury and expensive products and labels. But this trend-setting feel-good green is more of a modern hedonist. For this profile, the greater purpose of product or service brings the luxurious feeling. This profile appreciates the locally crafted beer and can spend lots of time researching the perfect product for them. They can hack their fixed gear bikes endlessly with the perfect components. They also want to be examples to others. They want to show how you can live good, sustainable, and meaningful life. Next slide, please. Here we have the tribal follower. This profile, like the name says, they want to follow others. Depending of who she or he will follow will affect if this profile turns to be a threat or opportunity to our environment. They are very active followers in social media. They have their idols and choose social norms easily from them. As you can see from the graph, they emphasize emotional choices which bring pleasure to them, friends and family. They appreciate an easy life. Typically, demographically, they are younger generation representatives, so also cost effectiveness is important to them. The most determinative characteristics for this profile is that they follow the example set by others. And now Markus will tell you more how we have used the motivation profiles in a development program.
Thanks, Ari. So very quickly, a few examples how these profiles have been used by companies and other organizations in Finland. One of the first times how we utilized the content that was created through the motivational profile work was that we developed a combination program for largest consumer companies in Finland and small and medium-sized companies that have a product that in a proven manner lowers the environmental impact of the user. And we put these companies together, and during a 3-month period, they went through 3 experiments where they took the product or service and looked at the messaging and how it is brought to the market. In some cases, how it's brought to the consumer, and in other cases, how it's brought to the business-to-business companies who then sell it onwards to the consumer. And I'll give you a few examples in the next slide. And this work has been done by dozens of companies, not only in this program, but it's been used by other consumer companies in Finland. Also, governmental agencies have used this method, and non-profit organizations have used it in order to plan their kind of messaging and how to introduce new things to a larger audience. And this has caught the attention of mainstream media in Finland. So there have been numerous articles written about the fact that how in a novel manner you can introduce sustainability-driven products to a new group or market. And here are 2 examples from 2 companies, and now a little bit of Finnish pronunciation. So the first case is called Järkisärki. So if you roll your R's, you can do the brand name. It's a simple food product and replaces sardines that are brought in from far away to Finland. And this fish is called roach, and it's typically a fish that is not eaten by Finns. It's a kind of waste fish that fills up our lakes, and now it's fished out, and the water quality in the lakes gets improved, and people get a local, ecologically produced, good meat replacement product. And this was marketed as a kind of ecological solution, as a good source of protein. And the users who got to taste this, they really loved it. But people who were selecting products to the biggest grocery stores in Finland did not really understand the merits of this product. And during these experiments, by using the motivational profiles, the company was able to explain to the second largest grocery store in Finland the kind of value of this offering. And within the 3-month period, they were able to unlock access to all of their stores. So thousands of stores in Finland they were able to go into. And this meant that during the program, their revenue grew 50% in terms of annual revenue. And the next year it has continued to grow 30 to 40%. Then the second case here is a company called Kicks Marketplace, and they had a product that was designed for peer-to-peer sharing, so circular economy related product. And they used the motivational profile tool together with the largest building company in Finland. And this building company has aspirations that they want to build a longer lasting relationship with people who move into the buildings that they've built. And they together tried out this platform, and during the trials in the 3 months, they realized that peer-to-peer sharing is something that people are not widely yet ready to engage with. They use the same software code to do something else, and now they get kind of curated content that helps people who live in these apartment buildings to get sustainability-driven services related to cleaning, repair, and other household services. And they have grown almost twice in their size during this 1.5 years. So this can be successfully used to reposition sustainability-driven products to a much wider market. And next, we will move on to the approach in British Columbia. And we are really happy to see that the tools and methods that have been tested and proven in Finland have been taken into use by a super active change maker team in Canada.
Thank you so much, Markus and Sari, for shedding light on the motivational study that you designed and created and delivered in Finland, and also how you engaged a wider group of demographics and governments and civil society business are doing that through appealing to things like motivations around common sense, effectiveness, wanting to be an example, setting example for others. Very illuminating. So if you have questions for Markus and Sari, please put them in the Q&A part of your, you'll see it at the bottom of your webinar screen, the Q&A, because that's what we'll be looking for, the questions and answers. And then the chat, of course, is open for discussion and sharing resources and connecting with each other. So as Markus is saying, there is, of course, a pickup that we've done here in British Columbia and in Canada. And to speak specifically to that, we'll hear now from Dagmar Timmer, the Managing Director of Strategic Initiatives for OneEarth, who is leading our program of work in British Columbia. Over to you, Dagmar.
Thank you, Vanessa. So as we adapted the study to Canada, we kept the focus on that whole range of everyday actions that people take. So this is not a study about sustainability per se. It seeks to really understand any decision that somebody makes in their daily lives. And this helps us to better understand the range of motivations that align with sustainable living actions, like repairing more or making more eco-friendly transportation choices. In the interviews and in the survey itself, we ask people about a whole set of actions and attitudes that they hold, and some are sustainable, some are not. So a benefit of this approach is avoiding the sort of biased respondents who might tell you what they think that you want to hear. So we show that people a set of actions, and then we ask them why to better understand those choices. And you'll hear more about that from Lindsay and Isa. Each of us can have several different motivation profiles, which change based on different contexts for specific purchase decisions and also over our life. We might have a primary leaning, like a dominant motivation, but a motivation profile is not the same thing as a profile of an individual. So it reflects a particular set of factors behind a specific action or lifestyle choice. And from that starting point, then, we can take our cues to communicate about actions that are aligned with sustainability. So when we tap into those multiple motivations, we get much, much further than actually asking everyone to join just the eco niche. We often tap into this diversity of motivations when we target communications around particular sectors like active transportation, for example, or energy savings. We assume people look at things like price or other motivations, but we seldom adopt this in a whole lifestyle approach. And then we also need to make those actions possible and often seamless by ensuring that the enabling conditions are in place, from policies to incentives, peer support, market goods and services. So on the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about the methodology that we adopted here. The SITRA motivation profiles described earlier are based on qualitative research that has then been validated quantitatively with advanced analytics for the whole of Finland. And we've built on SITRA's methodology with some details about how we're adapting those profiles to BC. So what we've done so far, we've had 20 Zoom interviews with a diverse set of people from 23 to 69. There's a mix of cultural backgrounds, housing types, transportation preferences. And the regions that we picked for the interviews were Vancouver, the Fraser Valley, and Vancouver Island. We're now right in the midst of the online survey. So 1,500 BC citizens are being surveyed between the ages of 18 to 60 plus, similar mix as the interviews, but this time we're actually looking at the whole of British Columbia. So Lower Mainland, Fraser Valley, Vancouver Island, the interior and Okanagan and Northern BC, and we'll be able to break it down according to all of those. As of July, when those interviews were conducted, many BCers were still managing quite well, actually, through COVID-19. There were certainly changing and emerging motivations for safety that we considered. The situation has continued to unfold since then, and so we will bear that in mind as we do the analysis. The survey asked participants key information about their demographics, including their housing situation, how long they've lived in Canada, their cultural background, and many other things that we can then cross-tabulate. The study is being rerun by Vancity across its membership, and we'll hear more about that shortly. SITRA made their initiative open source and free for anyone, and that's been our approach as well. However, in BC, what we've done is we've also brought along a group of co-sponsors who have early access to those insights and a chance to collaborate in the process and build the stories. We feel this study has global potential to be adapted to other places and across Canada. Part of our adaptation will look at building out appropriate titles for these profiles for Canada. So we welcome you to actually put ideas that you have as you hear Lindsay and Isa's presentation into the chat box. For example, we're not going to use the Finnish term tribal follower. You'll see that we have a placeholder for that, cultural follower. I'll finish by just noting a significant addition to our Canadian research, bringing a life transition lens to the motivation survey. So life transitions include moving house, retiring, having a child, changing jobs, and these can be a choice or they can actually be quite undesirable, such as the COVID pandemic or being rent evicted. We can support people in those transitional times to take up sustainable and circular economy actions. The key, of course, is those support systems that we bring to those times. What are the markets, the policy, and the cultural assets that we can bring, including business innovations? Life transitions are periods of time when our habits are already in flux, and OneEarth has found this to be an overlooked opportunity. It's actually a solution area in our global project, the Beacon for Sustainable Living, with nonprofit Hot or Cool. So over to you again, Vanessa, so that we can hear more about the Canadian adaptation.
Great, thank you, Dagmar. So as Dagmar was mentioning, she'd give a bit of a background of how we're adapting this to BC more generally. And in a moment, we're going to be hearing from Kira Gerwing from Vancity. I'll introduce her in a moment. I just want to note that some of you have found the Q&A box and are starting to add your questions there. I'm seeing a few questions popping up in the chat. We are capturing those separately, but if you could place your questions in the Q&A and of course keep the conversation going in the chat. As Dagmar mentioned, this study is being run across British Columbia with all these citizens, and it's also being rerun by Vancity across its membership. And Vancity is Canada's largest community credit union with $28.2 billion in assets plus assets under administration. And Kira Gerwing is joining us who's the Senior Manager of Community Investment at Vancity. And with OneEarth, we work together with her and with Vancity to mainstream sustainable living in British Columbia. The EnviroFund's 5-year focus on lighter living is one way that they support community-led and strategic initiatives that build the culture and structure of support for sustainable everyday lives. And we're joined by a number of other people from Vancity as participants as well. And I just want to ask Kira to speak about why the profiles resonate for you and how you're going to use these profiles and this survey within Vancity. Over to you, Kira.
Thanks so much, Vanessa, and hello to everybody from around the world. I'm so humbled to be amongst this global community talking about such an important topic. So Vancity has it considers itself to be a values-based bank, and so for a long time we've recognized that climate change and society's response to climate change is a key critical issue that we as a financial institution can play a role in. So we recognize that the need for taking meaningful and just climate action is urgent. And in our view, it's actually inseparable from the way that we engage with the financial system. So we take a triple bottom line approach to delivering our financial products and services. That means that we consider people, the planet, and profit in the way that we undertake our business. So we're committed to advancing opportunities that bring about a low carbon future, but in a way that brings everybody along. So it's really critical to our work that we address economic inequality in the way that we support our membership to take meaningful climate action. So we do this by leveraging our business model in creative ways to position ourselves to be pivotal to a climate solution. And there are really 5 levers that we as a financial institution have to maneuver. So the first of those levers is our full balance sheet. This includes our lending and managing our members' investments. The second lever is the financial products that we offer. So we're trying to think differently about what we offer to our members to support the kind of sustainable actions that we're talking about today. Third, because we are Canada's largest community credit union, we actually have significant influence. So we can engage with our members and we can work with community partners to advocate for the work that we're talking about today to be a little bit easier than what it feels like day in and day out. Our fourth lever is our operations. So we walk our talk. We practice sustainability in the way that we operate our head office and our branches. And finally, our reporting. So we are openly saying what is and what isn't working in our own charge towards sustainable finance and the role that that plays in meaningful climate action. But underpinning these 5 levers is a need to deeply understand our members' needs and their motivations. So because we're a member-led organization, these insights from these motivational profiles provide us a lens into our membership that's a key part of building a relevant and effective strategy of engagement. So as I said, the question that we're struggling with is, as a financial institution, what is our optimal role to play when confronting systemic inequality and addressing climate change? To answer that, we need to target our messaging in ways that reach our members by solving problems that our members are experiencing. So we need to design products and services that actually respond to our members' problems and day-to-day challenges. And we recognize that those offerings will only be successfully taken up if they have all of the wraparound supports. That includes climate reporting through our communications and marketing campaigns that line up seamlessly, that we train our staff and empower them to feel confident about having conversations about sustainable lifestyles with our members, and then engaging with community partners like OneEarth and the other co-sponsors that are part of today's webinar. And with that wraparound set of supports and some targeted, well-designed products and services, we can deliver a fulsome climate transition campaign for our membership. And to deliver that kind of full service program that I just described, we need to learn more about how to guide our members to connect the role that their money plays in fueling climate change or not. So luckily, we aren't doing this alone. First of all, financial institutions around the world are grappling with these same challenges, and Vancity is working alongside them. As one example of that, we signed on to the United Nations Principles for Responsible Banking at the end of 2019. And in so doing, we've committed to doing 2 things. First, undertaking an analysis that provides a view to the impacts associated with our own financial activities by sector, by region, and by client or customer type. So what that really means is that we're going to be disclosing the carbon impact of our current book of lending. And secondly, based on the results of that carbon impact analysis, by the end of 22, we'll be setting 2 distinct context-based targets for portfolio alignment, along with milestones and measures that align with our global targets, both the Paris Accord and the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Plus setting our own local goals. What that really means is that we're building a plan for how to reduce the carbon in our lending portfolio over time. I can't stress enough how important it is to us to develop this carbon reduction strategy in a way that addresses economic inequality, so we are not leaving any member behind. Other signatories to this program are doing the same, and what that means is that the insights we gain from the motivational profiles in this study will help to inform not just our own member engagement strategies, but we can also feed that up so other financial institutions throughout the world who are grappling with similar business problems can gather the same insights and apply them to their own client base or membership. And luckily, we aren't doing this alone in another way. We also have many community partners, most of whom are business members in the credit union as well, that are on this learning journey with us. And the opportunity that comes with understanding what motivates people in BC through these profiles is to adapt and apply these findings to solve problems that our community partners are also grappling with. So while it's applicable to the credit union, it's also applicable to solving business challenges that our memberships face. We're delighted that a diverse selection of co-ops, social ventures, social enterprises, and not-for-profit organizations were able to co-sponsor the qualitative and quantitative work that's being presented here. So together with these co-sponsors, we're able to shape and influence the storylines. We're able to understand how these profiles are being designed for our citizenry or our constituencies. And moving forward, how we can then deploy these insights to shape engagement strategies, like I said, not just for our own members, but also for our partners' customer bases and constituencies. So I'm part of Vancity's community investment team, and we, from our perspective, we saw a great deal of value in complementing the work that's being done by some of my colleagues who are also on this call from our marketing and community insights team. To bring forward and enable the findings to deliver an open source set of insights that all community partners and beyond can use to further their work and reach new target audiences. So listen, we inherently know that we go further together. And as a financial cooperative, this principle is baked into our DNA. But putting that principle of collaboration or cooperation into practice requires us to be intentional about how we engage with the ecosystem of players engaged in promoting and enabling sustainable living actions. For Vancity, that means interacting with our members directly through our own marketing and communication strategies, and engaging indirectly through our community partner strategies. This work to understand the motivations of folks living in our region and how they compare and contrast with the motivations of our own membership is an innovative and useful way to be intentional about how we engage our communities with an aim to build a constituency, really to curate our own membership in service of addressing climate change and economic inequality in the communities we serve. So from Vancity's perspective, the best community investments deliver shared outcomes that lead to sustainable living actions. For this work, building out motivational profiles in Southwestern BC, we achieved that goal. The credit union both shaped and benefited from the findings. Our community partners also benefited, and together we are greater than the sum of our parts. We are collectively positioned to collaborate and influence other actors in the municipalities and the regions where our members live, work, and play, so that we can move the dial on mainstreaming sustainable living actions and opportunities. Again, thanks so much for the opportunity to share our story with you today, and I hope inspires others to take part in this study moving forward. Back to you,
Thank
Vanessa.
you so much. Wonderful. Thank you, Kira. And I know that your colleague Krista is also from Vancity is here for answering questions later. We're so appreciative of the leadership of Vancity and also your collaboration with partners globally and in the region. Thank you so much for picking up on the motivational surveys, but also helping to shape this work together. I'm seeing that everyone's putting their questions now in the Q&A box and voting for your colleagues' questions and continuing to connect in the chat box, including celebrating Vancity's leadership, which I completely agree with. So now we're going to dive into these profiles further. We've seen a preview of them with SITRA providing some of those motivational profiles, and now with project lead OneEarth Senior Associate Lindsay Boyle, we're going to dive into them further. Lindsay is an expert with 20 more years of experience using research to understand people and inform marketing and innovation strategies. For the qualitative phase of the project, she's been supported by a team of highly skilled researchers from the global insights agency, The Sound, including Isa Braithwaite, who's with us today. Lindsay and Isa are insight partners to Google, North Face, Netflix, and other global brands. The quantitative phase of the study is led by Majid Khoury, whose team brings decades of expertise to this work, and we'll hear from him later. And so here is Lindsay and Isa on the initial phase of the study, and in a moment, we're going to poll you on which motivational profile you feel is the most dominant for you. So you can keep that in mind as you're listening. And as Dagmar noted, we're also really keen on any Canadian titles for the profiles that you might come up with. So in the chat box, as we're going through them, you might say, oh, what about this title for this profile? We're very interested in that. So keep in mind what's your dominant motivational profile and what might be some titles that you might think of. But most importantly, Lindsay and Isa, let's dive into those motivational profiles. Over to you.
Thanks so much, Vanessa. I'm so honored and excited to take you all on a bit of a journey about how we have started the first phase of this project and the analysis that we've done so far. We're very much midway in the project, but Isa and I and our colleague Jim Makuzakal we're the fortunate ones to be able to virtually meet and learn so much from 20 BC citizens. And so what we're going to do now is share some of those findings and their stories, and hopefully give you a real sense of how those motivations are coming to life for us. What we're going to share does not reflect any survey data yet, because that is still very much in process. So in our analysis of the first phase of the project, we found 9 potential profiles emerging, and our webinar is not long enough to share all of the profiles. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with 3 profiles that seem to be fairly consistent with the 3 that Sari told you about from Finland. The traditional voice of reason, the trend-setting feel-good green, and what we're calling the cultural follower. These are also significant because they are also very aligned with the circular economy. They really present opportunities for circular goods and services. And so they're very relevant for our conversation today. And most importantly, they're beyond the resourceful eco-warrior. They're different than the eco-warrior. So we're going to tell you about and share stories from people we met who really demonstrated these motivations, as well as 2 motivations that are coming up that are unique to BC. So as Sari said, our goal with these profiles is really to open your eyes to see a new way of thinking about the people you're trying to reach with circular business models and marketing. To do that, we'll bring them to life with their stories by playing some audio clips. So you can hear their own words, which are really powerful in terms of understanding. It's important to note that we've changed their names to protect their privacy. And also that throughout the presentation, there's some beautiful photographs which were sent to us by the participants, like this one, which I really wish my den looked like this. But basically we asked some of the participants to share with us their favorite room, which helps us understand even more about their motivations and backs up some of the things they told us. Since we were doing the interviews on Zoom, we weren't able to be in home with them directly because of COVID. So we're going to get started. So the first profile we're going to talk about is the traditional voice of reason, and it is the one that's coming through most consistently with the Finnish profile. And so I'm going to introduce and just kind of remind you that this is a profile really motivated by making sensible choices. These are the people who it's so aligned with the circular economy because they really hate waste. They would be people who really see wasting things as throwing money down the drain. It's just not sensible. And so we're going to learn about this motivation first from our participant whose name was Madhav, and he's a father who moved to Vancouver from India about 6 years ago. And so here's his words.
The scene like my parents who buying things like, okay, this is good quality, this is bad quality. And back home in India, if anything goes bad, they don't just throw it. They repair themselves or they call somebody to repair. So I got that thing from there, and still I do the same thing. If something like furniture or something, then I try to fix myself. I have bought all the tools rather than spending money on the new furniture. I rather fix the old one and make it last longer. So
I love how Madhav says what he does, or how he learned about repair was something that he learned from his parents. So it's very connected to his traditions. Next we're going to hear from Dave. Dave is a father with young kids, and he lives in the suburbs outside of Vancouver. And just a little background on him, he and his wife had been together since high school. They'd been through many years where things were very lean for them and they had very little extra money. They now have been kind of constantly renovating homes and selling homes and kind of doing better in terms of their financial situation, but still so much of his decisions were based on that frugality that he really learned, and that frugality really drove a lot of his choices. So we're going to hear from him as well.
So if we've got an appliance that's sucking back the energy and we can see it on the power bill, then we're obviously going to change it. Every time we've bought and rebought a place, the first thing we do is typically rip out a hot water tank and put in the newest, most high efficiency thing.
So I love the way Dave described how he decided to upgrade his hot water tank by looking at the energy bill. Because it's a perfect example of using facts to guide decisions. It's not just about how this motivation profile is not just about how they feel. It's very much based on some quantitative support or something that's factual. I really relate to this because I'm married to someone who's very much this profile and who's a mechanical engineer, and it's very clear how rational his thought is in terms of decisions that he makes. I also wanted to mention Dave was really motivated by benefits of some of his choices in terms of what he could teach his kids, by teaching them things like repairing skills or not wasting things could help them in dangerous situations in the future, such as an earthquake, which is a real risk in our region, or in future pandemics where they had to be more self-sufficient. So it's really important just to kind of bring home that people that we spoke to with this motivation were doing many sustainable living actions, but not at all because of the environment or climate change. As Sari mentioned, eco-friendly messaging is not going to be what engages this profile. So next, we're going to move on, and Isa is going to tell you about two other profiles that are similar to Finland, but also have some BC characteristics.
Yeah, so thank you, Lindsay. So we're going to talk a little bit about the feel-good green motivation. And so in British Columbia, we talk to people who are really consciously motivated by sustainability. And this internal driver of being sustainable is really core to the sense of who they are, and not only core sense of who they are, but who they want others to see. So by being an example, by leading with example and having other people see their actions, particularly with sustainability in mind. And we're going to hear a little from Sarah as she talks about this. This motivation really was obvious in how it came up within our conversations as some of the reasons for their choices. And so let's hear a little bit Sarah's words here.
A lot of my skin, especially skincare products, they always put it in, like, for example, moisturizer. It's always in, I used to buy from a certain brand that was always in like a plastic container. I didn't like that. And so I switched over to another company that does it in a glass bottle that can be recycled. So made that conscious effort.
Yeah, and so for Sarah and for people like her, it really came down to this balance of being better for the environment and also satisfying their personal needs and joys, and going so far as even to researching and being early adopters of some of these practices. And for her, willing to strike that balance really meant changing brands in some instances, or moving from dairy to alternative milks such as soy and almond milks, and then even researching further, learning that almond milk and its impacts, and then moving to oat milk. And so we're going to hear a little bit from Blake, another example, who adapted his life from moving from Vancouver to the Fraser Valley, and where he really took pride in showing people, not only in his professional life, but in his personal life, how they can integrate sustainable living actions. And so he's going to talk a little bit about that in this next clip.
Chilliwack, we have significant farmlands. So there's lots of produce stalls, lots of farms to visit. And it's really a driver of the culture of Chilliwack and community development. So being able to participate in that local economy, supporting local citizens directly, it's a good feeling for sure. And then also, just being able to stock up on fresh fruits and vegetables makes me feel good about my diet. And
yeah, and so as you can hear, you can hear when Blake really speaks about this, the good feeling he gets from not only participating in this local economy with the farmers, but also it being beneficial to his life and to his family's life. And so, as Sari mentioned about this Finland profile, we really found that these sustainable living actions lead to a better, more meaningful life, and they really these people feel good, and the motivation feels good when they can set an example for others to follow. And so for our next profile, we're going to talk a little bit about the cultural follower, which is a little bit different. So we spoke to people who really demonstrated this motivation and how they're influenced to make the decisions that they do, whether, and following some examples set from others, whether that be in person, whether that be through social media, online, or just the culture which they live in. And so these motivations behind some of their sustainable living actions are really a byproduct of wanting to or fitting in within that culture around them. And so we're going to learn a little bit about this from Bjorn and how he describes moving from Sweden to Vancouver, and a little bit about the cultural change.
I started buying secondhand after I came to Canada, for sure. Because one, that's just the style here, and like what people kind of are into, and it's really good. And two, it's very available. It's very accessible. Like, there is secondhand in Sweden, but small town Sweden does not have awesome secondhand shops where you can get what you want,
Yeah. And so even within that conversation, really understanding this motivation, it wasn't just about, not being able to get what you want, but also within his decisions about what types of food he ate. So moving to a plant-based diet here in Vancouver because it's accessible and, in some areas expected. And so buying secondhand, so making these sustainable living action decisions, but understanding the motivations behind that, is really important. And so, in our conversation, he couldn't imagine himself making those types of decisions in Sweden, as culturally they'd be frowned upon. However, cost factors heavily within this motivation and their decisions. Cost becomes a barrier to some of these sustainable choices, and Evie describes that struggle with the cost barrier within this next clip.
I have the hardest time with, yes, there's my day-to-day purchases, but the big purchase, so my fashion, there's a huge external pressure on women to look a certain way and to live sustainably and also fit some image. That is a huge reason why I can't line up my values with my purchasing, because I am a 23-year-old woman. Like, I am expected to look a certain way and act a certain way, and I have to buy things that aren't sustainable so then I can find, you know, a partner, a life partner, and that.
Yeah, and so we see within this motivation, you have some of you know, the barriers to making these decisions. And Lindsay is going to just talk a little bit about these 3 profiles and how they present, you know, unique strategic opportunities for marketers.
Thanks, Isa. Yeah, I just want to pause at this point, just because I found Evie's story really affecting, and it really brings to life, how can we help people like Evie? How can we make them see that they can have an impact? And how can we connect them to all of the incredible circular clothing options that are out there? And how can we as marketers or business developers help make Evie feel like second life clothes are the norm, and choosing it doesn't mean either breaking the budget or not fitting in, and you know, being risk kind of being a barrier to finding a life partner. These are really hard challenges that people are facing, and I feel like it's now our job as marketers and business developers and innovators to step up and really get better at helping solve some of these challenges that people are facing. I also think with the other 2 profiles, you know, you can see as people start doing more things like repairing instead of buying new things, or refusing disposable packaging, those choices are going to become more of the norm, and therefore more aspirational for people like Evie or people with a follower motivation. And that's what this motivation needs in order to start thinking that those choices are choices that they want to make. So that's our short sidebar on what we could be using these profiles for, but I still have 2 profiles to share with you. And these are 2 that showed up that are really unique to British Columbia. Both of them, I'm just showing you again on Sari's chart, that they both are profiles that sustainable living actions are really a byproduct of their dominant motivations. And so that's really important to note as we go through them. So the first one is what we're calling a health and fitness enthusiast. And when we spoke to some people, it really was apparent in our conversations how much how they lived was really based on personal health, either mental or physical goals, or fitness, you know, things they were really working on to be stronger and fitter. And we also heard there's some people who really like to understand and control what's going on, what's going into their body. And I think, as Dagmar mentioned, you know, COVID-19 will be continuing to impact our analysis and our findings in the survey. And probably this health outcome is really going to potentially be amplified by COVID right now. But in our interviews, I'll start by playing you a little clip from Joanna. And she's a young professional who lives downtown in Vancouver, and she was an elite volleyball player. And many of her choices, including using local bike share called Mobi, are really motivated by wanting to get stronger as an athlete.
I take that maybe like very rare. I Mobi everywhere. So I use Mobi. That's how I get around. I walk to work, how I get to the beach, how I get to my groceries, how I get to my workout. I like Club 16. I bike because I have a Mobi right in front of my building. And so I just hop on the bike, and that's me. Like, that's how I get around. Yeah.
And Anne was one of the people that we spoke to that is making choices in order to be really proactive in avoiding disease. We had people tell us about how they were really, wanting to protect themselves from cancer or a heart attack. And I'll play Anne's story, but she was a successful small business owner with grown-up kids. So let's hear from her.
I'm afraid of them.
Oh, tell me about that.
Well, it's only because of because I lost both my parents to cancer. My mom did a lot of research on oil and plastic, so man-made oils and plastic, and so it basically frightens me. And it's like this. It's like not like a big huge fright. It's just I look around, and even when it comes to recyclables, I understand that they're only recycling X amount of all this plastic that's freaking everywhere. It's frightening. I just find it frightening. Like
So again, just to reinforce that people with this type of motivation were doing many sustainable living actions, but they were not doing them to be sustainable. That rarely came up in our conversation and when they were explaining the reasons why they did what they did. So the last profile is characterized by a belief that owning things doesn't make you happy. Surprisingly, for most of the people that demonstrated this motivation, sustainability in the environment did not come up as reasons for this way of living, because we expected that. We were surprised to find that this lifestyle choice spans generations. So I think we were expecting to hear people downsizing, people that were empty nesters or who were older and just kind of realizing that things don't make you happy. But we also heard this as a choice for younger people just starting their adult life. And so here is Joanna again, talking about why she chooses to live in a studio apartment and own very little.
Maybe I didn't have a lot growing up as well. Didn't have a lot of things, didn't have a lot of money. Like our family wasn't like wealthy or rich. And a lot of I found joy in my childhood from doing sports and being on teams and experiences. So I don't find things make me happy, really. Like just having stuff. It's like how you feel with those things, really. Like, I don't know. But it's not having the thing for the sake of having it because someone else has it. So maybe that's how I would explain it.
And this is Kent, who also talked about this belief that owning things doesn't make you happy. And he was a successful film producer. So in, quite a, affluent kind of industry. So again, quite surprising that this was his choice, but I'll let you listen to him talk about his spiritual reasons for being a minimalist.
It comes from our spiritual leadings, to live simply and take little and be generous with what you have and be thankful for the little that you have.
So I found Kent so inspiring from our conversation, but it's important to note that he's not a monk. He hasn't given up everything. And when I asked if he was shifting to non-dairy milk, he just simply said, nothing beats butter. So concluding on what Sari mentioned earlier, is just that it is very likely that most people have more than one motivation within them, and motivations may change based on different situations, whether it's about owning something or whether it's about choosing comfort food. And motivations really are triggered or kind of changing based on different situations and cultures. And I think as marketers and innovators, this is really empowering to all of us to know that this diversity of motivations is available to us. And what's next? The quantitative is being done as we speak. Our survey has results coming in, and we can't wait to see how prevalent these motivations are in BC, supported by the hard data.
Great. Thank you so much, Lindsay and Isa, and for bringing the voices also of those people you interviewed into the event. And now we're going to ask a poll for all of you in terms of which motivational profile you kind of align with. Which one do you think might be the closest to your dominant one, knowing that you'll have many different aspects to it? So which one do you think is probably the one that links most to you? So we'll take a few seconds just to explore this one, and then we'll take a moment here. Thank you also for some suggestions on titles. All right, let's take a look at the results. Let's see where most people are aligning in terms of their dominant one. So traditional voice of reason, interesting. Very similar to what Finland found as well. So obviously this is not just a Finnish thing, but look at trend-setting, feel-good, resourceful, eco-aware, principled, minimalist coming up right behind. And of course, we're a very specific group here on the call, but yeah, it's very interesting. And of course, as Lindsay says, right now, people across BC are actually filling out the survey in real time. And so let's hear from Majid Khoury. In Insight Circles, he needs little introduction. Majid Khoury has over 30 years of market research expertise focused on advertising and brand research. And for 9 years, Majid was the Senior Vice President of the Western Region for Ipsos ASI, until going independent in 2012. He works with international local brands, including utilities, crown corporations, private national companies, startups, and nonprofits. Majid is leading the quantitative phase of this work and has worked with us to nuance the study for BC and for this COVID context. This is well worth the efforts, as it's going to give us an understanding of how these motivations land here in the province. And as we're on this webinar, 1,500 person survey is rolling out, and he's going to share a few immediate reflections as the survey results are coming in. Over to you, Majid.
Thank you, Vanessa, and thanks everyone for attending this today. Yes, the survey is not only live, it's almost complete. 2 days ago, we were at around 600 respondents. I just checked right now, and we're at 1412. So we're almost going to wrap it up probably by the weekend. So it's moving pretty nicely, and then we're going to move into the cluster analysis. The Vancity portion with the members is all ready to roll now that we've proved how the BC1 survey is working well and getting the data that we need. I don't want to guess on the segments, given that that has to go through advanced analytics, but based on the initial data I'm seeing and aligning very nicely with the poll that Vanessa has just did, what we're seeing is traditional voice of reason. And again, as Lindsay talked about, that is definitely standing out in terms of this interest in quality, durability, getting things done. So that's definitely standing out. The other good news is the data is also showing that the minimalist downsizers and the health and wellness segments that are BC focused that Lindsay and Isa have talked about are also coming out in the numbers. So it's looking good. The hypotheses are starting to come together, and the next phase would be reported in the a session in the new year, which I'll leave it to Dagmar to talk more to you about it. But it is happening, and it's almost going to be completing data collection in the next day or so. So
thank you so much, Majid, and yay, that's so exciting. Wonderful. So thank you, and we'll come back. Of course, one of the things that'll be happening is we're going to send all of you an invitation to a webinar in the early part of the year once the analysis is done, to give a sense of what's happening in Canada. And I just wanted to spend a few moments handing the floor to Rosemary Cooper, who is a senior associate at OneEarth and also the lead coordinator of the Share, Reuse, Repair initiative, because we've actually got a way that these motivational profiles are being adapted within the context of that initiative. Share, Reuse, Repair initiative is a project of Makeway's shared platform and is collaborating with OneEarth to adapt these SITRA's insight marketing tools to BC as part of SITRA's Shift 1.5 network, and which is a network around the world who's trying out all of this work. SRI has provided strategic input for the motivational profiles to ensure relevance to the circular economy, particularly these inner loops of sharing, reuse, and repair. And they're leading the adaptation of 2 other SITRA tools, the SHIFT framework and Frontrunner project in collaboration with OneEarth and Circular Citizen and support from Vancity. So here is SRI project director and OneEarth senior associate, Rosie. If you can tell us a little bit about how those connections are happening, Rosie.
Yeah, thanks so much, Vanessa. If you could move to the next slide, that would be great. Yeah, we're really thrilled to be part of this initiative to adapt SITRA tools to BC and Canada. One is called the SHIFT framework, and this is really a framework that distills these global best practices in marketing and psychology and behavioral economics into a really practical tool that can help innovators, both from the public and private sector, create that kind of persuasive messaging that shifts people's behaviors in more eco-conscious directions. And while this framework has been used to improve recycling and zero waste behaviors, it hasn't been done yet for circular behaviors. And so this project is going to fill that gap. And the lighter living profiles are going to be part of that process to really assess innovators, to understand, refine, and ideally expand their target markets. Next slide, please. At this moment in time, we're actually actively seeking 6 to 10 non-competitive public and private sector innovators who have a consumer-facing circular product, service, or program, have a real desire to improve the marketing messaging to enhance consumer and or citizen uptake, have a capacity and interest to develop and test some basic marketing materials using an A/B approach, and really a willingness to be profiled and to share in an open source way the results appropriately in a project brief and a webinar and at the 2021 World Circular Economy Forum. So please reach out, and I'm happy to share an outreach deck. Next slide, please. The other project is called the Frontrunner Youth Innovation Project, and this is adapting SITRA's Stuff in Flux project to really help businesses and social enterprise understand these early adopter youth, Gen Zs and millennials that are, significantly shaping new market spaces, so that innovators can both de-risk their circular product or program and really land their innovation strategy, particularly as we pivot out of COVID. Again, seeking new participants for that early in the new year. Reach out if that's of interest. Thank you. And I hand it back to Vanessa.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Rosemary, and very exciting work coming up. So now we're actually going to turn our attention for the final moments to the great questions that you've posed towards us. And I'm going to first ask a question Michelle Austin has asked, which I'll bring to Dagmar. Afterwards, I'm going to ask Linda's question to Isa first, and then Lindsay about the change agents question. So first, Dagmar, Michelle Austin asks, great webinar. Is the survey publicly available that was used to determine motivational profiles? Thanks. Dagmar.
Thanks so much for that question. So clearly we'd love for this survey to be rerun in different ways. The questionnaire is part of the process, but it's not shared given some of the design considerations that are there. But once the data is available in open source, we can share that data based on the cumulative responses with you. And so, and the co-sponsors will have some early insights that they're going to be given to. And then also, if you're interested in actually replicating this study, which I've already seen in the chat box, we're going to give you some specific instructions in the follow-up as well. We're super happy to help with specific targets or regions on that as well.
I was already saying we should do this in Ontario, so that's a great example of that, but also for companies and businesses. So I'm going to ask Isa first on the change agents piece, and then afterwards I'm going to ask if Marcus and Sari have anything to add after Lindsay, and also about the social media platforms causing a change in lifestyle. So that'll be over to you, Sari and Marcus, in a moment. But first, Isa, is there, Linda's asking, is there a motivation profile which aligns with change agents, people who seek change in the marketplace? Isa.
Sorry. I think actually, I think Lindsay might be better suited to answer that question, as she has just a little bit more depth within the motivational profiles. So
Yeah, no problem. You said, do you want to say anything about what you've seen in terms of social media platforms influencing lifestyles?
Oh, I think, you know, within the, some of the research that we have done for this project and for others, we have seen social media, particularly trends. I think, you know, one of the things we've seen, particularly around the pandemic, but around, you know, people's propensity to change their lifestyles, you know, in some small ways that are really beneficial to not just the environment, but to themselves. I think we see that a lot with plants, particularly now. You see like a lot of millennials bringing plants within their house. And that is something that feels like it was, the genesis was from social media, and also but people's emotions and how people were reacting to the environment that we're going through currently. So.
Great, thanks, Tisa. Lindsay, about the change agents motivational profiles question.
Yes, I'm so grateful for this, because I do think that within the profiles that we identified in our sample so far, I think the one that is most aligned with early adoption of circular products and services or trying new things would be the trend-setting feel-good greens. But really, I think the market shapers are a different group that we are hoping to explore and research in the study that Rosie mentioned, which is still to come. And we're looking for basically partners on that study for the Frontrunner Youth Project. And that would be really recruiting people who are very much pushing industries, pushing the market, demanding innovation where maybe innovation isn't happening. And we did not speak to those people in the profile study, but we are actively looking to be able to do that and understand those people in the Frontrunner study, the way that Marcus and Sari did with their study that they did globally several years ago. So we're kind of picking up on their example again to be able to adapt it for Canada.
Right, Rosie, anything to add about that point that Lindsay's just making before I go to Marcus?
No, I think she said it well. I mean, I think that I'm going to go back to what Marcus and Sari said that stays in my mind, is that if you don't understand what's in the hearts and minds of these Gen Zs and millennials that are really shaping markets in circular and sustainable directions and embracing equity and diversity, then you may miss out on some really critical innovation. Right. So that's really important. It's not to say that we don't see those early adopters in other age categories, but they're becoming very influential amongst their peers and influencing the broader and older mass market.
Right, thanks, Rosie. Marcus, anything around the change agents and also the influence of social media? Go ahead. And these early adopters, Marcus.
Well, the early adopters piece we have done in several countries around the world, so in 8 countries, with the idea is that can the behaviors that are now adopted by the people that we call in the study leading edge consumers, how likely is it that that will become a practice in the fast followers and mass market behavior? And that's a kind of prediction model that things that you see in a very small group, that how likely is it that that will become a mass market thing. So I think that's definitely worth looking at if you want to kind of grow your niche product to be appealing to a much wider audience. Comes from a different angle than the motivational profile, but still is a helpful tool. Then regarding social media, so it can have, of course, two different impacts on people's behavior. One is that it limits the information that we get, so we tend to get same type of information in our bubble. So then using the language that exists in your bubble is key, so that you can actually get new information to people. If you talk with the language that does not exist in their bubble, you cannot go into their social media kind of
Sari, anything to add on that point?
Yeah, about the social media. We had a social media calendar in our project. So kind of we need to use the marketing tools that everyone is using to sell the products and services. So we need to use the same tools to make people change their habits. So we kind of piggyback the hashtags we're already there. So if there's a specific day for some celebration, we kind of pick the action that we want people to do, which is close to that celebration, and we piggyback the hashtag. And so that way we kind of got more of a spread for our message. And also about the frontrunner study, we are actually doing now, it's publishing day is 15th of December, frontrunner study of how their behavior has changed during the COVID-19. So as we are usually in a behavior change, we kind of look for the attitudes and values, and then we wait for the behavior change to happen. Now we had to change our behavior. So we want to see what happened to values and attitudes. And it seems like those hidden values, which were behind kind of a simple life and sustainable lifestyle, they are getting stronger during this time. So it's also an interesting report coming up.
Great, thank you so much. And you see two people here on the screen that you haven't heard from yet. Max Serpa is from OneEarth. He's an associate and has been running the tech part and is one of the people we work with on sustainable lifestyles here in BC and globally. And Krista Lowen from Vancity. And actually, Krista, you've been helping me also with getting the question and answers around the chat. And there is a particular question for Vancity, which is, how are you making the connection between, can you see the impact and influence beyond the province, beyond our geographical base? How can we engage and inspire people outside our direct and immediate partner ecosystem? Krista.
Yeah, thanks so much for the question. So we definitely feel that our greatest impact and influence can be had in the local communities where our members live and work. So that's our primary focus. And so we have branches in Southwest BC, Fraser Valley, Metro Vancouver, Squamish, and the Capital Region District. But we also do have some reach into the Greater Toronto area through our subsidiary Vancity Community Investment Bank, but also through signing on to various different global reporting programs. We do find that we have an impact and influence in the financial sector more broadly. An example is our partnership for carbon accounting financials.
Great, thanks, Krista. Wonderful. And actually, one thing I want to note is, of course, there's other partners of ours that are not on this call that we work with on that kind of branching out globally and taking this beyond partners. And that includes the BCIT Center for Eco-Cities. And I know, Josh, you were asking Travers about different places of study. And Joanna already answered you that perhaps BCIT is a great place to look for circular economy education. I would definitely agree with that. And so we just have 1 minute left. There's an interesting question about how do we deal with these motivational profiles and at the same time also make sure we're not overshooting our resources. So I'm not sure who would be the best person to bring this to, but maybe Markus and Sari. Patrick says, you know, when we look at this, we've got Earth Overshoot Day. How far along can we take this motivational based approach, but still progress our need to remain within our resources, within our footprints? Who would like to respond, Markus or Sari? Because of course, some of them are not motivated by eco-green, but we still want to stay within our ecological footprints. Anything to add there, Markus, Sari?
Well, in principle, the approach of the motivational profiles would be helpful in introducing habits that would make people pay attention to their choices, so that we would not overshoot the consumption in such fast manner that we now do. So we don't even get to the first quarter of the year, and some countries have used their resources already. So it's about the fact that needs to be then modeled, that what are the behaviors that should be changed, so that we can show to people that what's the impact if you do something differently, and then use the motivational profile approach to introduce these new habits to people. And that's how we use them regarding climate in Finland, and that's what we are trying to do on a global scale. But nothing prevents it from being used for circularity practices or then kind of smarter use of resources on the planet.
Great, wonderful. Well, we're almost at time now. There's a lot of really great, interesting questions that we can pick up again in our next webinar. We will be inviting all of you to come back once we've had a chance to do the assessment of the survey that is being completed by this weekend. We look forward to being in touch with many of you who are either wanting to do this work internationally or here in Canada. for the international work, SITRA will be leading that. And here in Canada, we'd be very interested from OneEarth and our partners to connect with you about that. Ultimately, a strong business case for the circular economy is supported by a better understanding of these mix of motivations beyond the green niche. It allows us to expand our target audiences and services and products, as Marcus was just saying, that all of us were saying. And so really what we want to do is to realize that these green, eco, or sustainable motivations are only part of the picture in terms of adopting sustainable living practices. And we can align with these diverse motivations even within one person. So by adapting SITRA's profiles to our own context, we can accelerate the scaling of sustainable living and discover how widespread these actions already are. So we look forward to being in touch with you about continuing this motivational profile work both in BC and around the world. These are valuable user insights as we proactively work towards climate change, sustainability, meeting this challenge head on, even within the context of COVID, and speeding up the shift towards the circular economy. A big thank you to all of you for joining us and being so active in the chat box and question and answer. Thank you to the presenters, sponsors, and partners. We look forward to being in touch. Stay safe and stay well. Thank you.